Hi everyone, Lisa Haven here. Well, for quite some time, I have been doing research and study on the United Nations, and I've read multiple documents, multiple reports, including Agenda 21. I believe it's over 300 some odd pages in which the United Nations and other globalist organizations seek to re-educate your children using the Agenda 21 and fake global warming policies in order to get everybody on a certain frame of mind, which ultimately in the end will change the money hands of people. Not only that, but grant power to governing bodies such as the United Nations and take away the sovereignty from individual countries. Specifically, America and Europe are some of the ones that they are highly after. Well, with the rise of Donald Trump, America is fighting back and pushing against this United Nations for the first time in a very long time. And I have to say that's a good thing that we're finally making headway in that direction. Now, with that said, obviously there has to be some sort of peace, if you will, between the countries. However, a global dictating body in which nobody has a say of who gets elected, at least nobody here in America, I for one am not for that. Now, what do I have on the agenda today? I want to show you how bad the UN is actually infiltrated into America. Now, I've done a few reports like this in the past, but as more information surfaces, I try to get that to you as quick as I can. But one man in particular, he took a trip there to Hagerstown, Maryland. And while he was there, he had some great images that he took of United Nations vehicles. And I'm going to show you those pictures in just a moment. But for starters, UN vehicles are there, and when they're in the country, you have to ask why they are there. But here's some of the pictures. Now, the report is found on governmentslaves.info, and it's titled, I went to investigate the United Nations vehicles in Hagerstown, Maryland. Here is what I found. Now, here are some of the pictures that the guy took while he was there, and you can see the United Nations vehicles very evidently in that area. Now, there's also rumored reports of drones being flown into the facility, and I believe them to be true, but flown into the facility of which they harbor more United Nations vehicles inside of that facility there. But as you can see, based on those photos, there are United Nations vehicles in America. Now, Hagerstown, Maryland is not the only location that they're at as far as the vehicles, but this is one of the places in which they store them up. Now, one could argue and say, well, they're just there for storage or whatever. But again, you have to ask the question, why are they in our country? It's almost like if we took an ally, say, I don't know, Japan or somebody, and had a bunch of their militarized vehicles here in America, and what would they be doing here? Well, great question. And I think that's the question that needs to be answered from the American people. And the answer, according to the United Nations, is that they're teaming up through the Strong Cities Network. I'll throw that on the screen again, in which they team up with local areas here in America, local cities, sideswiping the federal government in a way. But they team up with them and say, well, if we ever need to come in and help out in the event of a crisis, then the United Nations can do that. I don't know about you, but I don't feel comfortable with the United Nations coming into our country and doing stuff like that. Number one, they're not out for the betterment of America. They're out for the betterment of themselves. And again, we don't elect these folks. Here's another thing to think about. They have an entire website, and I know most of you know this, but for those of you who don't, dedicated solely to disarmament, as you can see on the screen here. It's their disarmament and recruitment website, in which their whole focus is to disarm the population. Now, you can see on this next screen, number 10, the 10th goal of this organization is to, quote, the United Nations works for disarmament and development to build a world free from fear and want. And what is that fear and want that they're trying to build us away from? Well, it's very clearly disarmament, and they don't hide that in any way, shape, or form. And let me be frank, Mao took the guns, Hitler took the guns, and look what happened in those countries. I think we, the people, need to have and stand on our ground and say we're allowed to have our own Second Amendment rights. This is something our founding fathers fought for. 1776 rings a very big bell, obviously, but we cannot allow somebody to have that much power over the people when the people are supposed to be in charge. Now, here's another thing I want to show you is United Nations is pretty much in all of the 50 states, maybe in multiple locations even. Here's a few that I want to show you. Keep in mind there are hundreds of these. Here's the UNA, United Nations of Houston, of Hawaii, San Diego, Orange County, Austin, Southern Arizona Center, Chicago, and finally, I could go on, but here is a list or a map of all the chapters at the United Nations. As you can see on that map, it's all over the country, and I'm going to leave links below so you can check them out. But let's not forget about Model UN. This is something in which they partner with Agenda 21, whose 16th.9 agenda is to basically put a national identification through ID 2020. I'll throw that up on the screen, but they want to put this national identification on every person, and their solid goal is to get everyone mark of the beast, if you want to call it that as a Christian. That's kind of what they're attempting to do with ID 2020, and they want everyone to have this national ID by 2030. Now, whether or not they'll accomplish that goal is to be determined, but Model UN their entire structure, entire purpose is about getting your children to think globally and not on a nationalist level. They don't want the sovereignty of individual countries, and that's where I have a problem and take a problem with it. Anyhow, wanted to bring you the latest on all of that. I hope you guys had an amazing New Year's. Welcome to 2018. I'm so excited to be here and start a fresh year, and hoping for the best for all of us, and waiting to see what it has to harbor. Anyhow, don't forget to check out my partner at getthetea.com. He has the most amazing detox products. Also, my Patriot supply. I have a link below for food preparation and everything as well, so make sure you check those out. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.